So, Dr. J, how are you doing?
Very well, very well. It's been an interesting week.
Yes. Two things before we get into a pretty lively discussion, since we already had a little bit of a discussion before we started. I accessed your Preparedness Labs website. Fascinating. We don't need to talk about everything that's on it, but there are some things I learned. That I need now to pursue, especially your multi-dimensional four-part series online, courses. I know this is going to sound like advertising to people, but it's worth it because they look good. They really do, and I think it's time for me to delve into the different types of ideas that we need to explore when we're exploring a preparedness. It's all sitting there. Even in your second section where you're talking about looking at ourselves, there's the physical, the mental, and the financial health side. Three dimensions that we talk about in different contexts on different Instagrams. I've got to be physically whatever, and at a certain age, you've got to do these exercises in order just to get your knees to work, that kind of stuff. But we're talking something more than just getting my knees to work or our knees to work. The mental, at some point, maybe in a future discussion, we could talk more about the psychological, mental side of preparedness. We did some work on that a number of years ago. Financial health, that's something that's always going to be an issue, period, full stop, even when we aren't dealing with exogenous events. It's always there, and it's how do we handle it? And then when we look at the area of sheltering, really, when we think about it and looking at the subtopics, this hits on some of the things that we talked about in our last session, and that is, there's that great insight that you brought to the discussion of there's the club, there's the bridge, and then there's the network. And when we talk about sheltering, we often enough think about, you know, shelter, period, something where we can escape the elements from. You being a canoeist, of course, that's a tent. Me not being a canoeist, it's not going canoeing. So they're sheltering right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
You ain't getting me into no tent. It's as simple as that. At least not for a long, it has been a long time. But that whole sheltering area is something worth looking at and exploring at another time. And I'm mentioning these things because people who are listening to us, I would hope that they would take up the opportunity to go do more exploring. The preparednesslab.ca is something that is worth looking at, even if people don't want to do the program simply to look at the topics. That's an indicator.
Yeah.
We talked about the Decalogue in the past. Well, these are the 10 that we have to look at. This is, Moses coming down from the mountain. Yet at the same time, when we flesh it out, there are multiple dimensions to all of this. And in some of it is pretty straightforward. Some of it is, a little touchier, and a little bit more difficult to wrap our heads around. So uh, it, I know that before we started, we had a conversation that you and I didn't want to talk about, but I think it's worth talking about. And that is, and you can introduce the story. It's what people over a certain age have to face in terms, especially men, in terms of that annual examination.
Yes. Annual or every 3 to 5 years, depending on your current medical condition and your recommendations of your medical practitioners,
Yes.
that we have to go in for this or should go in for a periodic and highly encouraged, all joking aside. periodic checkup, shall we say, your colonoscopy. Let's call it what it is.
Yeah.
Um, and reason I think it's important to bring this up is because we often shy from talking about the difficult and challenging things that are a bit out of touch and that we don't want to publicly discourse, but it's about health. And when you talk about preparedness, a big key of preparedness, and I do this in my course and in much of my podcast episodes that I do, talks about understanding that how you react and how you're able to react to situations beyond your control is largely built on how you've taken care of yourself. So from a
Yeah.
physical, mental, and financial health. If you're out of shape, you're stressed to the nines, and you're broke, that's not the time to face a significant crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And those three are within your control. But
Mm-hmm.
what I'm very, very careful about saying throughout the entire program is this is not about blaming anybody.
No.
This is not about saying you failed to take care of
No.
yourself. This is
No.
not a shaming exercise. This
Yeah.
is just an honest to goodness look at yourself in the mirror and
Yeah.
say, I'm a plus
Yeah.
50-year-old male. I got to go for that test that I don't want to go for.
Yeah.
Um, and I just have to do it. We joked about the preparation phase, which is it is what it is. I just went through it. Everybody has to go through it. Um, it's not an experience you wish on your worst enemy. Um, it requires you to shelter in place for a period of 24 hours. You do not want to be more than 20 feet away from a certain device. But the point is if we can putting a bit of humor around it and joking about it is great because then it makes it easier to talk about the important subject. But that's just an example is if you take care of your physical body, maybe you're not an Adonis and you're not in uber shape, but by taking steps to take care of your physical body, then it will be there to take care of you
Mm-hmm.
when the situations change.
Yeah.
Because when you go into an emergency scenario, you have to think about your stress levels are going to go up, your cortisone levels are going to be out of whack, your sleep level is going to go down, your stress levels are going to go through the roof.
Yeah.
If you're already at a difficult place in life,
Yeah.
then you're going to push yourself potentially over an edge and you're going to be less than useful to the people around you, or your decision making is going to be faulty simply because of steps that are within your control.
Yeah.
But we make sure we frame our whole educational model around the idea that it's not about blaming people. And I come back
Right.
to that again, but it's important to understand that it's about looking yourself in the mirror. I am where I am. I was 236 pounds, and I talk about this in my podcast. I'm on my way to 180. I'm not there yet. I'm on the journey, but I'm trying to get there because I understand as a 53-year-old male, I'm far better suited to react to shocks when I'm 180 than when I'm 236 pounds, right? It's my health.
Yes. Yeah.
All the additional weight that I had on my body, and I still do, places stress on my heart. It places stress on my lungs. It puts extra chances for cancer to show up. Blah blah blah. So it's about taking those precautionary,
Yeah.
intentional measures by accepting responsibility.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's the word I wrote down. It's responsibility. But what's we have a whole spectrum of people who hopefully watch what it is or listen to what we're talking about. But those who are younger, they would probably, and I, for one, had this attitude, this is not necessary. For those of us who are in our mid-range, 50s, early 60s, this becomes not quite a requirement, but something that we embrace. For those of us who are beyond 60, as the body changes, this is something that most of us are not aware of. We don't really recognize that our bodies change. There are certain functions that don't work anymore to the same level that they did 30 years ago. Knees are knees, hips are hips. And it's not because you don't exercise. And I see enough Instagram postings of people in their 60s. You do this kind of chair exercise, you'll be fit for life. And I go, well, there's a part of me that may not want to be fit for life. Okay, you do get to a point, and I know I'm
Yeah,
stretching it here, where you
yeah.
just say, I've had enough. But then there's another part of me that says, oh, okay, stop, right? I'm fine. I did lose weight. I can lose weight. I have the constant struggle over that last 10 pounds. It's like the last 10 miles or last 10 kilometers, especially if you're on a run. There are certain things I won't do. There are certain things that I will do. But I recently over the weekend, as a matter of this past weekend, wrote to friends in Winnipeg. They are facing what is called ageism. Um, Alex is in the hospital. He's a needle taking diabetic. He's bedridden. Uh, Alex would, it's kind of hard to say how old Alex is. He's either my age or a little older. I'll be not shocked, but I will be a little surprised if he's younger because he looks much older than I do. And his wife, Gail, who's a really good friend of mine, and they face the systemic issues of well, we'll treat you, but there's a certain level of triage that exists in the institutions. They're not acknowledged, and this gets us to discussion of how far can we go to depend on institutions. It's not universal. We have universal health care, but that's not universal in the sense of everybody is treated the same way.
Yeah.
And as we become physically well, enter into different physical situations. Let's say you were a smoker and you've developed lung cancer. Well, yes, you'll be treated. But that will probably be a form of stasis. This is not a criticism of the healthcare system. It's more a case of triage.
Yeah.
Who's going to be the ones that we treat first? And this is us. This is important for us, especially in terms of preparedness, to keep in mind. The system really, because it is a system, it has a life of its own, separate from what humans want or need. It will treat the winnables, the young people who have had an accident, who come into emergency, who could be sewed up and then dismissed and go through some kind of physio in order to get back to bounce back. All right, and those of us who reach a certain age, automatically the treatment, not intentionally, but just automatically, people don't think this through in terms of responsibility, but the system will automatically say this person gets this kind of treatment because there's no cure for aging.
Yeah.
All right. And
As if we need a cure.
well, it's not even that. I wish it were. I wish they would be that bold-faced and just tell you, we don't need you anymore. You're old. Get lost.
Or
But it's
getting
a
old is
case of,
perfectly fine. We don't need
yeah,
to cure people from getting old.
yes, we don't know what to do for you. We might know what to do with you in a small space of time. And often enough, it's a case of take these pills. Um, and it's a form of stasis, but it's not a cure.
No, and this is very and a very good friend of mine who works in emergency management and healthcare gave
Mm.
me this analogy, kind of right along the lines of what you're saying. He said, if you look at it from the difference between preventative maintenance and traumatic response,
Yeah.
our healthcare system in Canada is exceptionally good at traumatic response
Yes.
operations. It's
Totally.
exceptionally bad
Yep.
at preventative maintenance.
Yes.
But I argue in my line of preparedness, and this gentleman's argument was preventative maintenance is your responsibility
Yes.
of your body and of your health. Preventative maintenance is not the healthcare system's responsibility.
No.
But when somebody fails to take care of themselves, that lack of preventive maintenance leads to a more frequent trauma event, which then burdens the healthcare
Yes.
system
Yes.
unnecessarily. But
Yes.
we don't like to have that conversation in our country to
No.
place burden and responsibility
Yes.
on the individual for their healthcare because we have this outsized belief in the capacity and the capability of our public healthcare system.
Yes.
Right? Very, very good. And I'll use me as an example. I was a smoker for over 10 years. So I had some lung problems, right? Self-induced, fair enough, not blaming anybody else. I was diagnosed with adult asthma or late onset asthma, right? Combine that and some bunch of interesting places I went to in my military career and et cetera. All of that together, there I am, right? Not a problem. We'll take care of you. Preventive maintenance. This is what you need to do. Did a scan of my lungs, found something else in need of immediate reaction. Within 3 days, I'm back in to get another CT scan. Within a week, I'm back in to get a third CT scan. So when they found something of greater concern, then, dude, you kind of did this to yourself. Here's your maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
They were very good at reacting to it. But what that taught me is that now that I'm in my 50s and I'm just a few years younger than you, not many, but a few years, I'm now actively taking my preventative maintenance of my physical
Yes.
body as
Yeah.
my responsibility.
Yeah.
So I waited in line the 9 months to see a cardiologist. I waited in line 7.5 months to see a respirologist. And I went through all of the major bodily systems, and I spent some time recently with a gastrointestinal guy doing his work. But I've taken the preventive maintenance seriously. So I'm going through the major systems of the body and saying, okay, let's do a check. How are we doing?
Yeah.
Nothing of concern.
Yeah.
One thing has popped up of concern that I was completely unaware of. And we're focused on dealing with that. But if I didn't do that, if I
Yeah.
had not taken initiative to look at what I thought was a medical problem with me and bang down doors,
Yeah.
the system's not designed to do that for me.
Yeah.
And that's when I become dependent on a system
Yeah.
without understanding that I have an element of commitment as well. I then get shocked, or I would have been shocked when this one problem manifested itself in 2 to 3 years
Yeah.
with a traumatic event that was wholly and totally preventable
Yeah.
had I paid attention to my system ahead of time.
Yeah.
And that is very, very well correlated to
Yeah.
when we swing that over and we look at general preparedness
Yep.
and looking at where you choose to live, where you
Yep.
choose to work, how you conduct your life.
Well, your medical professional colleague actually identifies the great divide. That is the difference between preventative maintenance and emergency response. Preventative maintenance is all about preparedness.
Yep.
You keep using the word lifestyle. I keep calling it way of life. But it's how we choose from the position of responsibility to maintain quality of life for ourselves. So we may want to call it preventative maintenance, but it actually is maintenance.
Yeah.
How do you want to live?
Yep.
Right? What is it that you want to do in order to enjoy your life? Let's get blunt here.
Yep.
Um, Even if we were to drop the preventative altogether and just say, okay, well, what is it that you enjoy? And if we were to sit down with a group of people and just, in a circle and say, so what makes you happy? What is it that you like to do? And not why do you like to do it, just what do you like to do? Then to explore why. I know that, again, in this message I sent to my friends in Winnipeg, I live a very good life. I don't live a very luxurious life. I like to travel. Um, I like to eat. Okay. And I like to eat well. All right. I don't like to eat excessively, but I do like to eat well. And I like to cook. And there are things I like to do. People ask me, so what do you do that? You're in a position where you can go out and you know, and I ran into this today in discussion with our team. Uh, you can always get buy food, bring it in, or have it delivered. You don't have to do anything. I said, whoa, 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 wait. All right. First of all, I like to go to grocery stores. Why? They're okay. They're not on the top of the list for entertainment. Take my word for it. Unless, of course, you have a very thick relationship with fellow grocery store denizens, and you want to figure out who the characters are in your next novel that you're writing. So that's what you do. No, I like because it's a day out. It's an adventure. It's price checking. Yes, I price check. I don't carry a list with me. Give me a freaking break. It's you can tell whether something is more expensive here than anywhere else. I like freshness. I like to do this. I like to look at. I like to. It becomes. I know this is going to sound strange. It becomes a sensory experience. I don't need to go surfing in Bali in order to have a sensory experience. I can go to the local grocery store. Now, it may be a factor of age. Oh, you're an old man, Victor. This is your circle, and so on and so forth. Well, actually, no. I have different ways of maintaining a level of happiness in my life that is not just doing chores. But I find what it does, it takes me out of the reactive mode. Suddenly I have to do this. It is a response mode. There is a certain necessity to it. There's emergency response. There's a necessity to it. Versus a preventative maintenance, which is I choose to do this. There's a difference between preparedness and not being prepared, right? In the simplest
Yeah.
possible understanding.
And everything that I champion on our website is about not trying to change what you do and who you are into something else to make you prepared, but to say that preparedness is about wrapping your current life in a blanket of insulation
Yeah,
against exogenous shock. Because
yeah,
that's why I don't produce a PDF form filler that people can just check off, do these 10 things and you'll be
yeah,
fine, right?
yeah.
Because it doesn't work.
No.
You don't want to go surfing in Bali, but there are people that do. Like the one example I use is there is uh, the example of the painter, the young painter who she loves to paint, but she can't make an income at it yet. So she's working as a barista at Starbucks, painting at night, trying to sell her paintings with a dream of being a full-time painter. She's not doing anything wrong. She's not failing to follow the right life. She's living the life that she wants. So
Mm-hmm.
how do we wrap her existence in a blanket of preparedness
Mm-hmm.
without her changing what she has to do? Because if I tell you to be prepared, you
Yeah.
need to change the way you're doing life,
Mm.
I'm done,
No.
right?
No.
Because now you're going to hate preparedness because it's taken something away from you and you're going to avoid it and you're going to do it. So from the person who wants to surf in Bali to the person who loves to cook,
Yeah.
um, I've got a friend who is very well off. He makes over 400K as a salesman every year. Um, but he lives in a very reserved townhouse, drives an average car, and him and his wife just love to travel.
Mm.
So they spend their income. They just travel everywhere and they
Yeah.
travel a lot and they travel well.
Yeah.
They're not doing anything wrong. It's how they live their life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, no matter what you or anybody listening to this podcast is doing, you're not doing it wrong. The question is, how do I protect your ability to
Yeah.
keep doing what you want to do, irrespective of economic, political,
Yeah.
ideological, cultural
Yeah.
fights, and everything
Yeah.
else that's going on, right?
Yeah.
And preventative maintenance, a lifestyle or way of life, is a simple frame by which you take actions to do that,
Yeah.
not the state. And it's not that the state is doing anything wrong.
No.
It's not
No.
anti-government or it's a
No.
political campaign.
No.
It's that the systems the state creates are there to support shock and awe
Yeah.
events,
Yeah. Yeah.
newspaper events, not every day am I taking care of my health? You know, if you're in financial distress, and a lot of people are now, there's a bunch of people that will sell you an easy fix. If it's an easy fix, it's probably not true,
Yes.
right?
Right.
A reasonable 5-year plan to get out of a financial hole is something that's normal.
Yeah.
But we don't normalize that. We're like, okay, sell everything, eat beans and rice until you pay your bills. Okay, that's going to last a month. Then the divorce is going to happen and
Yeah.
you're going to have even
Yeah.
bigger bills, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's about logic, it's about intelligence, but it's about facilitating people to live the lives they
Yeah.
want,
Yeah.
not the other way around.
Well, the thought that came to mind as you were talking, for me, that came to mind right now, when we think of terms of preventative, it's as if we have to, lay out a plan in order to handle exogenous events, of course, which becomes a bit a waste of energy, because what's the exogenous event? Uh, how do you define that? How do you identify it? How do you handle? Never mind, how do you handle it? That's a whole other thing. But what I find fascinating, as I said, the word that came to mind is the word forethought. Interesting. I made a distinction in a conversation with some friends between habits and routines. I don't have routines. I'm one of those typical academics. I'm crazy. I do things when I feel like doing it. I'm completely messy. I've got all kinds of paper with little notes on it that I can't read. And well, see, you're organized. You should see some of mine. And I just write all over the place because I need to visualize and so on and so forth. But I'm not what I would call someone who lives a structured kind of life. I have routines. All right. I like to get up at a certain time. I like to do this at a certain time. I like to do that at a certain time. I like to be in the office. I have my coffee. Da, 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 da. If they don't happen, I don't go out and shoot myself. Okay. It's a habit.
Yep.
Habits are malleable. Okay, if I don't want to get up on a certain day at 5 o'clock in the morning, which is my usual time to get up, because I've had a long week, as I have had this past week, tomorrow I might sleep in. All right. I know where the coffee is. I know where the toast is. I know where the whatever is. And I might prepare by having things ready, but less a routine and more a habit. That because I like to keep my options open. It's
Yep.
as simple as that.
Yep.
So people have asked me, for example, oh, what are you doing for your summer vacation? I said, nothing. They looked at me. I said, why? This is the time when everybody goes on vacation. And also, I'm not everybody.
No.
Okay, that's an arrogant way of looking at it. And I agree, I'm arrogant. But at the same time, I don't like going to places where, I put my feet in the sand and I get sand between my toes and in other parts of my body that I'm really not comfortable with. And I'm not interested in, like you, going on a canoe trip and swatting flies and dealing with rain and living in a tent. Please, I have my comfort needs. And people say, so what do you do to relax? I said, well, I like to add on days before and after a commitment overseas or anywhere else for that matter. So when we used to do some training at Banff, the Banff Management Center, one of my favorite places to deliver training, uh, you're up on Mountain Road above the Cascades, and you're looking at Banff Springs. Um, Wonderful location. The food can be okay. It can get a little boring when you're doing buffets every day, but that's different. That's just Victor being Victor. What I like, though, is the ability to, on the last day of a 5-day executive program, to go to Banff Springs Hotel and treat myself to a spectacular dinner. And you go, well, isn't that expensive? I'm not staying at the Banff Springs, which, as you know, on a cheap night is 600 and some odd dollars. No, but I am enjoying the atmosphere of the Banff Springs Hotel. All right.
No,
And the food, which is also very, very good.
it is
And,
exceptional.
what that to me is vacation time.
Yep. And I think a lot the same way. I every year I go to a conference in Banff, and it's actually held at the Banff Springs.
Yeah, I know.
So I get to stay at the Banff Springs at conference rates,
Yes.
right? Which are far less than regular rates.
Oh, tell me about it.
But there is something interesting about the ambiance sitting in the Rundle Bar in the
Yeah.
Banff Springs,
Yes.
drinking a $25 cocktail that, trust
Yes.
me, is better than any other cocktail you've had anywhere.
Yes.
Because to work there, you have to be a genius.
Yes.
So I'm a huge fan of an espresso martini.
Uh-huh.
I've had them everywhere. I've never had one to the quality of Banff Springs. So I go there every year. My wife comes with me. We add a couple of days onto the trip because they let us stay at the Banff Springs at the corporate rate outside of that as long as it runs through.
Yeah.
Um, and we explore Banff, and it's an absolutely magical place to be. And yes, it is not cheap. It is not in any way, shape, or form a cheap vacation.
Yep.
Um, but that is something that we tag on the year. So we do that in the fall in lieu of taking a big summer
Yeah.
vacation
Yeah.
in July and August.
Yeah.
Because we like, different from you, the sand in our toes and in
Yeah.
other parts. I love that. Going to the beach
Yeah.
in February and sitting on a beach in the Caribbean while it's freezing in Canada is awesome. I love it. And I do nothing but enjoy what comes with my all-inclusive arm bracelet, if you know
Yeah.
what I mean, right?
Yes. Yes.
Um, Food and drink and downtime. But that means everybody. So I have to take care of everything about me and my financial world
Yes.
so that I can facilitate
Yes.
the ability to do what I want to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
That's preventive maintenance. I can't travel to Banff unless I obviously make choices about where money is spent,
Yeah.
right? But that's part of preventive maintenance. That's part of making a series of choices. So if I want a certain outcome, I'm the one who has to design the roadmap to get that outcome,
Yep.
right? If I can't afford a trip, I haven't failed at life. I'm not a victim. I'm not being oppressed because I can't afford to go to the Banff Springs in July at $1,100 a night,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
not the system that's out to get me.
Yeah.
It's that if that's the price, then what am I willing to do and sacrifice to make set the conditions so I can go?
Yeah.
Which means I don't go to the Banff Springs in the summer because it's outside of my
Yeah.
desire. Now, I have too many other things that I love to do to sacrifice that kind of money to do that.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's it is that idea of where your outcomes are your responsibility. The decisions that facilitate that outcome are your responsibility. And so when you take that preventative maintenance across the spectrum of your life, when those hammers come down, the shocks that you don't control,
Yeah.
you are far better positioned to have a positive response,
Yes.
to be less impacted. Zero impact is impossible. It's like having zero risk. It's not possible. You're going to get impacted by shocks that are beyond your
Oh, you
control.
have to.
It can't be
Yeah.
zero,
Yeah.
but you're mitigating the impact that happens to you, and you're improving the time frame in which you are able to bounce back.
Well, the word preventative has some mixed meanings that maybe we want to expand beyond the word to prevent. Preventative maintenance is a focus on maintenance, doing something in order to enable yourself to be able to handle situations. Say in a health reality, the reality of health, you're going to grow old. Period. So everything you do is not so much to prevent you from growing old. That's reality.
Yeah.
It's to prepare you. We go to the preparedness word to prepare you in order to live a quality of life, a way of life that has quality part of it as you grow old. One of the words, again, I go back to this, preventative seems to indicate that you're trying to prevent something from happening, when in reality, what we're talking about is putting forethought into planning so that we can enable ourselves to make decisions when we have to. Right? When we're facing an exogenous situation where we have no control, we have to enable ourselves to make decisions as to whether we're going to go left or right at the crossroads.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can't do that simply by being smacked in the face by the exogenous situation. You have to at least have your head, your mind, your brain, or as a hockey friend of mine used to say, your head bone wrapped around, what the possibilities are.
Yeah.
And those possibilities are a whole range of things, from the most practical, how do we get out of here if we have to leave? When do we get out of here? If we want to leave before we're told to, all right, again, that's a decision versus a command, or a compliance with a command. And all the way through to where are we going to go and who's coming with us.
Yep.
Right? And these are all realities that say, okay, preventative, yes, not to avoid or to overcome an issue, we don't know, but to have the forethought to be able to manage ourselves in the face of what we think, and not more than think, what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Um, and it's actually, that whole thing wraps around responsibility. Who's responsible here? And we go back to the medical healthcare situation. If we're not responsible for our own health, then why should the system be responsible for taking care of us? That's kind of draconian, but at the same time, there's a certain truth in that.
Well, there is, and in our system where we have a responsive, let's put it this way. I don't have a choice. I must, if I want healthcare, I must be a member of the public system. In
Yes.
Canada, I have no choice.
No, we have no
That's
choice.
the only choice I have.
That's right.
Do I have a responsibility because I'm burdening you, Victor, with the cost of my medical care,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
right? If it was a for pay in system, then I could do whatever the heck I wanted. My
Sure.
choices would make my premium through the roof if I was dumb. And therefore that would, so there is a collective kind of way of pushing people and saying, hey, listen,
Yep.
we're all responsible for each other's dumb decisions. So
Yes.
let's lessen the dumb decisions
Right.
by accepting responsibility for our own health so that the system can concentrate on what it's really designed to do, which is respond to traumatic events.
Yes.
Right? I'll jump your previous comment about the word prevent. I have this argument in the emergency management field all the time. I don't like the word prevent because prevent is binary. Prevent is not mitigation.
No.
I argue this all the time. So people say we need to prevent disasters. I'm like, good luck with that. Right? You believe in God, that's great. Maybe God can do it, but you and I can't prevent a disaster from occurring. What we can do is mitigate our exposure to the risk, therefore mitigate the impact of the event on our personal lives. We can mitigate, we can't prevent, right? But the government of Canada still uses the word prevent in its literature on emergency management, and I argue with them all the time saying you can't. You can't prevent a flood. You can mitigate against the flood damaging homes by getting people to do a bunch of preventative measures, but that's solely different from preventing the flood itself.
Yeah.
You can't do that. And so when we look at that collective idea, we really don't reinforce that in the Canadian context, that the success of our healthcare system is based upon everybody taking personal responsibility
Yes.
for their level of health
Yes.
and improving their health. And I've often said, imagine, and I'm going to get on a bit of a soapbox here. Um, I've often said that imagine a healthcare system where we're closing hospital beds,
Yeah.
not because we can't afford them, but because nobody needs them,
Yeah.
because the population has chosen
Yeah.
to adopt healthy lifestyles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the nurses in the emergency room has a 3-minute wait because it's only dealing with those unforeseen
Yeah.
traumatic events,
Yeah. Yeah.
not dealing with regular preventative measures,
Yes.
because everybody's taking care of themselves. Everybody has access to primary care, which is, again, a
Mhm.
problem that for some strange reason we can't solve after 30 years. But the issue is when we do that, we collectively reduce the cost of healthcare,
Mhm.
right? Because all we do in today's system is continually attempt to deal with the symptoms. The population is getting sicker, so our healthcare is getting more expensive.
Mhm.
Nobody looks at the why don't we just stop making the population sick
Yes.
and we can dramatically
Yeah.
reduce the demand on our healthcare system
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
people are healthy.
Yeah.
But that would require you, I, and everybody listening to this podcast to take care of themselves.
Yes.
And darn it, it's not our job, right? That's the
Mhm.
general phrase that you get from people.
Yeah.
That's why the government healthcare system is there, and it's not.
Well, it actually, as you're talking, again, I always make notes because I don't have a long-term memory here when we talk. The team laughs. They just go, "Oh, why do you always have pieces of paper with little?" I said, you can't even read what it is I've written
No, but it
because
means something to
it's
me.
scratch, you know. I am a doctor, but not a medical doctor, but I should have been a medical doctor because I can't even read what I'm saying in my
I call for a
prescription.
doctor, but don't confuse.
Yes, yes. What's fascinating about our system, because you can remember, I also have, different experiences in it's the paid for use system coming out of the States. Although I was young, so I didn't really understand that as much in terms of differentiation with ours. I'm not ever going to put down our medical system and or a healthcare system because, as far as I'm concerned, it's and I know I'm about to say something that people will probably go nuts on. I think it's brilliant. I think it's absolutely brilliant for what it does. It's absolutely brilliant, and I'm glad it's there. It's my fallback position, right? As I actually had a doctor once yell at me because I was having heart palpitations, and after going through all of the tests to see whether I was, had a weak heart or not, he looked at me and he said, "The next time you actually feel like this," because I had this massive pain on the left side, and then he said, "And you're coming to me 3 months later, like it's kind of late. What do you want me to do?" He said, "The next time that happens, if you don't go to emergency, next time I see you, will probably be on a slab somewhere." And I said, "Okay." And so what we actually discovered after going through all, much like you, all the tests and so on and so forth, having 12 cups of coffee before noon is not conducive to eliminating a racing heart. You know,
No.
no, it's kind of like you're killing yourself, idiot. So do something about it. Down to 1 cup. That's it. It took a while, but that's it. But what's interesting on the negative side of our healthcare system, or the social understanding or societal understanding of our healthcare system, or any system, government in any shape or form, is that we take on a caretaker mentality. Someone's going to take care of me. And if they don't, then it's their fault.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. You
Yeah.
know, and it's not about my lifestyle and whether I smoked or I drank 12 cups of coffee before noon, or that's bad enough. But it's a case of, well, if I just continue doing that, someone's going to take care of me. And we do sometimes, I'd say more generally than not, have a caretaker mentality.
Yeah.
Mom and dad are to come by and clean up after us. And it drives me a little crazy on an everyday basis because we have this little area outside of our office here on Alliance Avenue in Toronto that is a patio. Right, it's got 4 chairs. It's got a nice glass table, and so on and so forth. And you can have lunch. You're surrounded by plants, and you can look out the window at all the trees, and it's kind of pleasant. And at one point, I got so angry that I removed it because we put it out there as the institute. I removed it, and everybody said, "Why?" I said, "Because there's the garbage can, and there's where people are leaving their garbage on the table." I said, "I'm nobody's parent here."
Yeah.
All right. And if we can't get to a level of responsibility, I'm not even going to use the word maturity, level of responsibility where you cannot, where you just, do you refuse or you're just incapable of moving your used can where you just finished drinking whatever it is you drank and
Yeah.
put it into the garbage can that is sitting right over there, not even 5 feet away from you. If you can't do that, why should I give you an opportunity to relax in a location at my well, I won't say my responsibility. I set this up so you could relax, and you've just screwed it up.
Yeah.
So if you want, go call your mother or your father, most likely your mother, and they'll come and pick up after you. Not on my watch.
It's that I think a lot of it has to do with our individualistic society that we've created. We've lost a sense of, now I got to be careful when I say this, collectivism, because that can go south in a hurry with some
Oh,
people.
yes. Oh,
But
yeah.
we have our healthcare system is designed, and I will not say it's brilliant like you, but I will say it can be brilliant. But it is only capable of being successful when all the parties to it execute their
Yeah.
responsibility.
Yes. Yeah.
The
Okay.
medical system, to the best of its ability, is executing its responsibility. It's the population that's failing the medical system,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is why I don't care how many billions you throw at it. You could throw 100 billion more at our healthcare system and it won't fix a thing until
No.
the population decides that it is their responsibility
Yeah.
to adopt a healthy lifestyle,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? To take care of yourself, right?
Yeah.
And including taking care of yourself is just not eating by Canada's food guide, which is a piece of junk anyhow, but that's a total different conversation.
Oh,
Um,
jeez.
but it means taking care of yourself and doing the preventative
Yeah.
maintenance and checking in every once in a while.
Yeah.
Like if you've got a pain in the left side of your chest radiating to an arm or up to your jaw, we should immediately
Yeah.
engage our system. And if you
Yep.
say to an ER doctor, 10 out of 10 times the response will be, you did the right thing.
Yeah.
It turns out it was ingestion. Thanks for
Yeah.
coming.
Yes.
That's, we'd rather be here
Yeah.
and tell you it's ingestion than we have to drive over and sign the form whatever death certificate because you're not here anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The system should be designed to be utilized in that format. But if
Yeah.
you go to the ER, and
Yeah.
I've unfortunately spent a lot of time in the ER over the last year with sick relatives, um, it is filled with people who shouldn't be there because of the lack of public preventative healthcare, which is based upon having access to a primary care physician. But it's about, and I, you can go down the line of making some pretty direct accusations at people you see in society, and you're like, I, the choices you've obviously made have placed yourself in an unhealthy situation. And by you making those choices, you've placed a burden on my finances.
Yeah.
Because I now have to pay more taxes to cover the poor choices you've made. And we've lost the ability to, not directly, and I'm not talking about calling out people on the street. I'm saying where we turn around and look at each other and say, okay, we have a collective responsibility here. I mean, you and I are old enough to remember participation.
Oh, yes.
Okay. When I was in school, you got a bronze, silver, or gold badge for how healthy and athletic your ability was. That would not be successful in today's school,
No.
but it should be.
Yep.
Award the healthy, physically fit people with the highest honors and encourage those that didn't reach that standard
Yeah.
to aim higher. Because if you do it in school, and just like we teach people in school how to learn and how to love the curiosity of reading, the curiosity of potential of wonderful life's possibilities when you take care of your health,
Mm-hmm.
that should be part of the institutional learning that we put in school. And it used to be at one point, you know, the old saying of the 35-year-old Canadian is as healthy as the average 65-year-old Swede,
Mm-hmm.
because the Swedish are active and they eat healthy,
Yeah.
right? I've seen people do these grocery haul videos. I don't know if you've ever seen them on Instagram or on various different platforms and say, this is all my groceries that I bought for 175. Inflation is horrible. I'm looking at it and I'm not seeing food. I'm
Yeah.
seeing a whole bunch of manufactured goods that are
Yes.
reasonably digestible by
Yeah.
the human animal,
Yeah.
but I don't see much food on the table.
Yeah. Yeah. To make sure that I think we're both on the same wavelength here. Uh, we're talking about those of us who can. We're not pointing fingers at people who are, for a variety of reasons, are on the fringe.
Nope.
Right? People who are on the fringe have my greatest sympathy, and I do whatever I can. And yes, they need the services that exist. You know, in they are human beings. We are human beings. And one of the things that I always try to do, I'm going to, well, I should maybe take the word always out of the equation here, that I try to do is to greet people, no matter who they are, what they look like. Um, you know, Toronto is not known for being the city where people say hello to each other in passing. And not that I'm a saint on this, but it's the fringe people, I'm using that term, those who are indigent, any term you want to use, those who are on the outs, who need the support of the systems, period. And for me, that's the reason why the system exists and should exist.
Yep.
And I'll put whatever money towards it from a tax point of view that I think will in some way assure, not ensure, but some way assure that people can be taken care of. I know enough people who are in that situation who refuse to go to the system, but let's not talk about that.
No, it's about having the system available, and I'll
It's
echo that.
available.
I'll echo that completely. It's we have such limited amount of availability in the system because so much of the money is used, or I would say wasted, on things that we could address,
Exactly.
that we can't afford, the vulnerable people on the edge and the margins of
Exactly.
society, that
Exactly.
we
Exactly.
we can't open enough addiction beds. We can't open enough mental health beds because we're dealing with a whole bunch of other illnesses in
Yes.
society
Yes.
that are
Yes.
wholly preventable
Yes.
by
Yes.
the individual.
Yes. Well,
But
again,
we choose to not do that.
it's the difference between those who can,
Yeah.
those who are vulnerable, and they cannot. Okay.
Yeah.
And there is real in a very rich society like ours here in Canada, even more in, say, the States or parts of Europe. Um, it's the vulnerable who are left out, but it's also those who can, who are not vulnerable, who take advantage.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
No
Yeah.
two ways about it. I
Yeah.
mean, I think our system is great, fine. All right, I use the word perfect. Maybe that's overindulging. But for me, it's it's fine. It meets all of my needs, but I don't have a lot of needs because I choose not to have a lot of needs. I mean, very early on, maybe I am just unusual or crazy or whatever term anybody wants to use. That's really their problem, not mine. The uh, my doctors, even the one who just retired, knew that I don't like taking medications. I don't like pharma. And that's because it creates dependencies. And we're talking about, things you actually need to do to lose weight or whatever, whatever. And so I would always look for the alternative. If you're going to deal with your diabetes or your propensity to diabetes, you change your diet and you lose weight.
Yep.
Or you take the diabetic pill that you have to be on for the rest of your life. And I said, I don't want to be on a pill for the rest of my life. So the doctor verbally slaps me on the side of the head. Well, do something about it, idiot.
Yep.
Or I'm going to put you on pills,
Yep.
right? Because then you're going to become chronic and then you're going to be a burden on the system. Ah, ah. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So it's those who can. And those who can choose, right?
Yep.
And it becomes a way of life, and it becomes whether you're going to do preventative or you're going to do forethought,
Hmm.
or you're going to live in a way where the decision and the responsibility are yours.
Yep.
Those who cannot make the decision, they are vulnerable and they can't live up to any responsibility as set out by society. Remember, this responsibility isn't just me, it's within context. There's a whole structure that
Yep.
we live in, and they can't do that. They are vulnerable, they're on the edge, they're at the fringe, they, for whatever reasons, and God love them. As sad as that makes me, they're the ones that the system should be focusing on.
Yep. And the same thing happens to extend this to preparedness side of things in the emergency management side. The vulnerable and the marginal society take a disproportionate amount of incident response resources. So
Yeah,
when you have a disaster and within an urban area, those on the margins of society are those that take the largest demand and require the largest level of assistance. So
yes,
we're always working on programs. So
yes,
how do we help
yeah,
those in the vulnerable conditions?
yeah, yeah,
Now, whether they're in the vulnerable conditions by bad life choices or bad life
yeah,
circumstances, again,
yeah,
this goes back to what I said earlier. It's not about beating vulnerable people on the head and blaming them. It's
yeah,
about first, how do we help you set up for success?
yeah.
So, how do we move you through the vulnerability that you're in right now to an exit program back to you're a fully normalized, functioning, and
Mm-hmm.
contributing member of
Mm-hmm.
society? But in the meantime, how do we set the system up so that it's able to allocate the appropriate resources to
Yes.
give you these? Now, you're right. There is a fringe group that stick the middle finger at the system, and God love them. You're in a free and democratic society. You have the right to do that. Fair
Yep.
enough, right?
Yep.
All I want to be able to do is have the opportunity of assistance available
Yes.
should the individual choose
Yes.
that
Yeah.
they no longer want to live the
Yeah.
type of lifestyle
Yeah.
they are,
Yes.
that we have those systems available, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we all know, uh, I've had many a veteran friend addicted to many things to deal with mental health issues, and at some point in their frame, they had to come to a decision of, I need to fix this. I don't know how, but I know I need to. And that's the binary switch that flips, that gets him into a system when
Yeah.
properly funded,
Yeah.
can move them out through the other side and they get appropriate help.
Yeah.
When somebody makes that call and there's nobody there,
Yeah.
or the system says, hey, listen, I can get you a counselor in 3.5 months,
Yeah.
Friday afternoon at not at 4 p.m. Are you free?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how do you work? It doesn't work. So
Yeah.
again, we can roll it all the way back to the economic principle of scarcity, right? We have a limited amount of resources. How do we properly and efficiently allocate those as best we can in society? Part of that is by removing unwanted, unnecessary demand, by getting people to assume responsibility for their outcomes and their health so that the limited resources can be allocated to those situations where people can't change. I can't influence the fact that my car gets rear-ended today and I need to be evac to a hospital, right? But I'm really hoping that there's one there and that an
Yes.
ambulance is available. And I'll
Yeah.
give you one example. When I was coming home from Carleton University, when I was doing my PhD, we had a gentleman. We have double-decker buses in Ottawa, and so wintertime, buddy goes arse over tea kettle, as we like to say in the East Coast, down the stairs,
Oh.
pops his shoulder out,
Oh.
very loud and painful. 45 minutes we sat there before some form of assistance from a fire department or a paramedic could
Oh.
be brought to the scene to help the individual. So the individual had to sit in a pile at the bottom of the stairs.
Hmm.
We couldn't move the bus because he wasn't
No.
seated. So
No.
we all sat there for 45 minutes waiting
Yeah.
for the system to be able to provide somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a healthcare in crisis,
Yes.
right? We,
Yeah.
in a city of Ottawa, we reach what they call level 0 about 300 times a year.
Hmm.
There are, irrespective of need, there are no paramedics available.
Yeah.
A heart
Yeah.
attack, call 911. Nobody can help you.
Yeah. Totally facetious. This is like so off the wall. I'm going to tell this story. As a matter of fact, as a team, we were discussing this morning. Today was joke day. I think we just couldn't stop laughing. One of us, our significant other, is an EMS. All right, and so we were talking about triage, how does this work, and so on and so forth. And I'm not going to go into those details because they're somewhat private. But we talked about first responders. And I live in a condo that's fairly small, old, and it's changed demographically. We have a younger group now, but when I first moved there, I was the youngster. So it says something about how old everybody else was. And the building is incredibly comfortable, but there are certain quirks around it. And the fire alarms used to go off on a regular basis because there's a pressure point where the pressure goes down in the pipe systems and the alarms go off. And it was connected to the fire department not far down the road. And and at the time, we don't do this anymore, thankfully. We would all leave our apartments. This is like 2 o'clock in the morning, and you'd be meeting your neighbors in their 2 o'clock look to 2 a.m. look in the lobby, which is something that I decided I wasn't going to do too often because that's a whole other social thing you don't want to, never mind nightmares that come along with that. So we'd all be there. Many of my neighbors were older women, and these firemen would come in. Of course, they would be the only ones who could change the alarm, go down to the alarm room, and so on and so forth. And I know this is so off the wall. And my neighbors would say, "Oh, that one's a keeper." And I'd look at them going, and I go, okay, this is firemen, firehouse calendar look. These guys are nice looking. All right, no two ways about it. And they know they're nice looking, and there they are in their complete get up, and they're walking around with axes and whatever else. And I'm it's the second reason why I would not show up in the lobby during a fire alarm, because I don't need to listen to my neighbors nattering about which ones they wanted to keep. And I thought it does get that strange, but at the same time, as funny as that is, and facetiously said as that is, we also think in terms of you know wherein does responsibility lie? I think that's what we're talking about here in terms not only of what we plan to do and how we make decisions and so on and so forth, and also what our capabilities are, right? And that's actually where we get into the preparedness side. is recognizing what is it that we need to be capable of in order to face risk head on so that we can handle it and handle ourselves, right? And it gets us into without getting into the depth now, into what is a risk event, and how do we understand it, and what are the dimensions of a risk event. They're the obvious aspects of a risk event. I live on the third floor of this building, and if there's a flood that reaches the third floor, there are going to be an awful lot of dead people, never mind all around me. Never mind all of the infrastructure that's not going to be workable. All right. So there's an exogenous that's extreme. Uh, you know, uh, and so it gets us to something that you identify in one of your sessions on preparedness and the preparedness lab. And that is, how do we begin to identify what is most likely but least dangerous, and what is least likely but most dangerous in terms of any risk that we face any day of the week? And that level of scenario planning or differentiation is part and parcel of what I think is the core of preparing ourselves to be prepared. You can't hear you.
There you go. Wrong button. It's because the spectrum we can often find, and preparedness often leads to avoidance behavior because there are so many
Yes.
possible things that could happen to me.
Yeah.
How can I be ready for everything? Look
Right.
at all the things that could occur. Look around the world. It seems a bit overwhelming. And humanity's first response to an overwhelming stimulus is avoidance or apathy. I just
Yep.
don't care. Whatever. I'll just carry
Yep.
on. So what we've tried to look at is how do we put that along a spectrum? How do we develop a spectrum of possibilities? So if we get you ready for both ends of the possible spectrum, as you outline them, and if you're ready for the polar opposites, then by definition you can likely handle whatever happens in the middle. And it's looking at, and it's going to be different. And the thing about risk analysis is risk is easy to understand. It's very difficult to apply it to everybody because what the risks that you face are going to be different from mine because your family construction is different, how you live your life, where you're located, how you travel to work, your commute, your lifestyle or your way of life, which is a list of activities that incorporates a whole bunch of additional risk by definition of you choosing to do it. So everybody's risk profile is so broad and so deep. You can go down that road, and there are methodologies to do it, but it's a very detailed, long analysis. So to bring it back to what seems reasonable to the average person to be able to accomplish, we put everything on that spectrum. And that's the idea of saying to people, if you're ready for what's likely to happen, and it's likely to be no more than a pain in the arse, full stop, that's good. And on the other end, what in your mind is likely the most dangerous thing that could happen to you? And then you got started to think about how you might consider dealing with that.
Yeah.
And it's how you answer that question is going to be different. But what's the most dangerous things that happens to you is going to be different than what happens to me.
Yeah.
We frame it in what I think is the most dangerous thing that happens to anybody, and that's evacuation.
Yeah.
On a very short notice, having to leave your house
Yeah.
and likely losing everything in it.
Yeah.
And I was on CBC's Marketplace as a guest in the season opener in October of last year on their season on disaster preparedness. And we went through a number of families in Halifax, and all they knew is that we were going to do a bit of an exercise and talk to them about disaster preparedness because hurricane season was really, in full
Oh,
speed.
yeah.
And What we were actually doing is we showed up at these people's residences, put the cameras on, stood there and said, okay, you have 5 minutes to evacuate, grab everything. And they had no notice that we were doing this. And it
Mhm.
was a quasi initial experiment to see what people would do and what they would grab in the 5 minutes. And then afterwards, I was there as the disaster expert to talk to them about what ideas, what
Mhm.
strategies, how did they do, etc. But the whole idea is that is the most impactful thing that could happen to anybody, having to leave your home in 5 minutes with what you can grab and then losing everything you left behind.
Mhm.
Sitting down with a cup of coffee and thinking about what your world looks like with that really starts to get people thinking about, I need to make some considerations. How do I make that event
Mhm.
more successful, knowing I can't stop the house from burning down in a wildfire? Just
Mhm.
ask the people in Jasper, right? You
Mhm.
can't. But how
Oh,
do I make that experience
yeah,
better for my family?
yeah.
And so we deal with that in the video course and in the books, and a lot of our episodes on our podcast talk about that. But it's about that look we use as an example, but that might not be the most dangerous thing that could happen depending on your circumstances.
Mhm. Mhm. You raise an interesting question because as you're talking, I'm thinking, okay, what if? What would I do? I'm not going to say at this point, but depending again on the most dangerous and the immediacy of a response without forethought, right? Forethought at the moment. There may have been forethought leading up to what would I do? It's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Very interesting question. I think that for me, the immediacy of it is the keys, the phone, the wallet. Right. I don't keep a lot of cash around. So the wallet has all the credit cards. Now, if the banks are dead, so what do you want from that? That means ain't nothing.
Bigger problems.
It's bigger problems. But for the moment, to get out of the house, what do you bring? Probably, I don't care how warm or hot it is out there, probably a jacket, because you never know what the elements are going to be. And potentially, instead of just wearing my summer shoes, which I'm wearing now, possibly put my boots on to
Yeah.
keep my feet dry. Would I bring extra clothes? I may not have time.
The question that and the answer we pose with the solution is really for that is think about that now. When you don't have to evacuate your apartment, think about that. When the next fire alarm goes off and you smell smoke,
Yes,
you see smoke,
yes,
and this is real, it's going up.
yeah.
Um, Imagine if you put the time and effort into creating a list of the
Mhm,
things you would like to grab and where they are.
mhm,
So you think through it in times of peace and calm. We tell people to sit down and do this with family members, knowing you have very little time, but what would you grab?
mhm.
When that moment happens, in the highly unlikely event that it does, you pull that piece of paper out of your kitchen counter or table, wherever it is, and you're executing a plan. You're not
Yep,
thinking, you're doing, because
yep,
you've already done the
yep,
planning ahead of time. This is what we tell people to do. This is preparedness in that you've already thought through what you need to grab. You're
yep,
not thinking about what you need to grab.
yep,
You're just grabbing what you've already decided,
yeah, yeah,
and you're out the
yeah,
door in a very short period of time
yeah,
with
yeah,
everything that you think is priceless and irreplaceable and you
yeah.
need to have.
Yeah. Well, interesting you say that because 2 winters ago, we had one of those snowstorms here in Toronto, there where everything stopped because it was like instantaneous and there was a lot and it kept going, it kept going, and it kept going. And the entire public transit system shut down, uh, underground as well as above ground. And, and I'm nowhere near my home in terms of walking. And I'm
Yep.
here in the office. And I'm going, what the hell would you do? Mind you, I did get home because one of the other people in the building was driving and they lived not far from me. That's different. That was a lucky
Lucky
instant,
circumstance. Yeah.
you know. But since then, we're in my office. See the sofa behind me?
Yeah.
That's new. That's my sleeping sofa. It's the most uncomfortable sofa to sit in. It just breaks your back. But if I need to stay here overnight,
Yeah.
I'm prepared.
Yep.
Inside the cupboards, I have all the changes of clothes. I have the blankets. I have whatever I need. I decided that winter is real.
Yeah. It is.
Okay. Is it going to happen again? Probably not. Is it the possibility it's going to happen again? Who knows?
Yep.
Who knows? And so I decided the next time this happens, I'm not going to run around going, how the hell do I get home? I'm going to stay here.
Yep.
Full stop.
Yeah.
All right. And we have 3 refrigerators with freezers. Make sure there's enough. There it is.
And it's something simple like that that doesn't cost any extra money.
Yeah.
It didn't, but it's just a preparedness plan. So ideally, your stress level and your anxiety
Yeah.
about winter storms goes down
Right.
as a result of you
Yeah.
making this decision. No big deal. Let's stay overnight here.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I don't even think about it.
Right.
Don't
And
even think.
that's the benefit of preparedness can be. And that's how preparedness helps your mental
Yeah.
health.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
live, people are choosing, and I'll use that intentionally. People are choosing to live a really challenging lifestyles in a very difficult world.
Yeah.
And if you can take steps like you just explained that reduces your stress level, people can start to contribute to happier
Yeah. Yeah.
lives, less stressful lives.
But what led to that, and we're gonna come to an end at some point here. What led to that was the crisis itself.
Yep.
All right. I decided that the plan emerged and the action emerged after the fact. Thankfully, the exogenous situation was not fatal. Right?
Yeah.
It was difficult, but not fatal.
Yeah.
Right. So I was lucky. Um, Now we're going to end on an exercise that you may or may not want to talk about, and that is before we started, you mentioned that you underwent a medical procedure, and there was a preparation for that medical procedure, which was 12 to 14 to 18 hours prior to actually the procedure.
Yep.
And you also mentioned that your porcelain throne broke in the middle of the night. So the question, you and I laughed about it, but we also talked about what's the alternative? What do you do?
Yep.
Right? Now, look at the exogenous situation.
Yep.
You took a preparation in order, which is this terrifying thing that you drink.
Horrible.
Oh, just like who invented that stuff? By the way, it's better that it goes down this side rather than the other way, which let's not even talk about
No.
that. But that used to be the way, by the way. I am that old.
Yeah.
So you cannot stop it.
No.
Think about it. Anybody listening to this, you cannot stop it. Your body is going to evacuate absolutely everything inside you, and it ain't gonna stop.
Nope.
You have no receptacle to receive that
Nope.
waste. The reason why is that your plumbing decided to check out because you were overusing it during the procedure or prior to the procedure. Okay. Now, some of us laughing as we just did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
come on. Well, what kind of plumbing do you have? Okay, folks, that's a question for later on.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
You now have a situation.
Yep. I broke the toilet and I no longer have access to a toilet, but I have an immediate need. And this is real for people who live in homes with a singular toilet, and many families do. What is your backup when the toilet's no longer available? Right? It's a simple question. The simple solution that I have is I use I have a 5-gallon bucket that you would get at Home Depot or whatever. They're like $3.25. You can buy them with the names on the side. uh, a garbage bag and kitty litter. Like literally, it's not an expensive solution, and most people have it. And you can get it for a short. But imagine not having it.
Right.
Imagine not. I'm 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of this process where I need immediate access to facilities. I broke it, and I did. I broke it.
Yeah.
Now I need to keep using the facilities, but I don't have access to it. Now I'm lucky I live in a two-throne household, so life carried on. But if I didn't, and I didn't have a backup,
Oh yeah.
oh boy, life's a whole bunch of difference now. So
Oh yeah.
that just something as simple as a 5 gallon bucket, a garbage bag, and some kitty litter saves me from an incredibly embarrassing pounding on my neighbor's door at 2 o'clock in the morning
Well,
and
well,
type of event.
what even your post issue solution is post experience.
That's why preparedness leads. You have to
Exactly.
lead. And this is the question that I ask everybody to use when they're thinking about preparedness. What does your world look like when you no longer have access to something?
Yep.
And a toilet, believe it or not, is
Oh.
one of those things that we don't think about, that we
Oh.
assume every day will
Right.
work, but it's pretty consequential when it fails. Now, mine just happened to fail at a really funny time, but
Well.
they can fail otherwise. So,
Well.
if you ask yourself that question and look at the systems in your house, the systems that you use every day and are dependent on them, what does my world look like when I don't have access to that anymore? And you think about, what am I going to do? That's the preventative maintenance. That's leading, not waiting for the event to spur some type of solution for the next time.
What one of the I mean, we're going to end with I'm going to end with this story. One of the things I learned long ago traveling, especially in China and in Latin America, and people have asked this question: why do all of these hotels in certain countries have packets of uh, tissue? The little packet. And I carry them in my briefcase and in my and it didn't dawn on me until I had to use a public facility, even in as sophisticated a city as Buenos Aires or in Shanghai, and they don't provide toilet paper.
Yep. Yep.
I know we're ending on a pretty crude level here, but when we talk about preparedness, we are talking about everything from what goes in this side of our body and comes out the other side of our body on a regular basis.
Yep.
Damn it.
Yes.
This is a factory.
Yep.
It's burning energy.
Right. And it needs systems to support that. And when the systems aren't available, it's your responsibility to replicate or to have something to deal with that.
To deal with a substitute, to
Yes.
find a way to get around it. And what we're talking about, and even with the snowstorm story I just told, and you with your broken toilet, and me with packets coming out of the hotel, um, those are things that we often enough learn after the fact. Preparedness, it's a response. I am not going to allow myself to be in this situation again.
Right.
But what we're talking about when we talk about preparedness is, what do I have to do in order to, all right, have the forethought to enable myself to make the right decision at the moment that it's needed.
Yep. And not
It's about
put
it's
myself in
about
this situation.
capacity
Yeah.
planning.
Yep.
Put that in business language.
Yep.
It's capacity planning.
Yep.
And on that note, I think we've dealt with, at least ending with, some pretty okay, I'll call them interesting. There's the most nebulous and neutral term that has
And I
absolutely
know there's
no
people
meaning.
listening, nodding their heads right now.
Oh yeah, I've been
Oh
there.
yeah, I know that. I know
Oh,
it.
I've
I've
been
been
there.
there. Yep.
I've been there. Yep, yep. I remember being on tour at the whatever, whatever, and I just had, my tacos. And the enchiladas have decided to do something.
Yep. To initiate action.
And on that note, have a great weekend.
All right, you too.